Welcome back to Gainverse, the channel where we cut through noise and break down XRP news using facts, data, and clear analysis. If you've been holding XRP for a while, chances are you've seen the same story repeated again and again across social media. Thumbnails promise a massive supply shock, comments say XRP is about to disappear from the market, and charts on X make it feel like we are one step away from a historic price explosion. This idea is exciting, and honestly, it's comforting. But today we need to slow down and ask a serious question. What if this entire supply shock story is based on a misunderstanding? The supply shock theory sounds simple and almost perfect. Ripple locks most of the XRP in escrow. Institutions slowly buy what's left. Retail investors hold tight. Demand increases. And suddenly there isn't enough XRP available. When supply hits zero and demand keeps growing, price has only one direction to go, up. This story has kept the XRP community hopeful during years of sideways price action. It's the dream many holders are emotionally invested in. But here's the problem. Markets don't move on dreams, they move on numbers. And recently, someone who actually works at the technical heart of the XRP ledger stepped forward with data that challenges this entire narrative. A respected validator known as Vetri shared on-chain evidence showing that nearly 16 billion XRP are still sitting openly on centralized exchanges, ready to be traded. That number alone forces us to rethink everything we've been told. If XRP were truly running out, the price would already reflect that scarcity. But instead, every time the market starts to move, more XRP seems to appear. This creates frustration among holders who feel like progress is constantly being delayed. The reason for this confusion is that most people focus only on total supply or circulating supply, while ignoring the most important factor for price action, liquid supply. Liquid supply is the XRP that can be sold instantly. It includes exchange balances, trading bots, and whale wallets ready to act. And right now, that liquid supply is massive. So before we blame manipulation or hidden forces, we need to understand the math behind the market. In this series, we are not chasing hype. We are following the data. And in the next part, we'll break down exactly where this XRP liquidity is sitting and why the supply shock narrative refuses to die. To really understand why the supply shock narrative keeps falling apart, we need to look at the place most people ignore: centralized exchanges. When investors talk about XRP supply, they usually focus on total supply or circulating supply. But neither of those truly moves the price in the short or medium term. What actually matters is liquid supply, the XRP that is immediately available to be sold. Liquid supply includes XRP sitting in exchange wallets, active trading accounts, market-making bots, and whale balances that can be deployed at any moment. This is the XRP that reacts to price movement. And according to on-chain analysis shared by validator Vetri, nearly 16 billion XRP are currently sitting on exchanges worldwide, ready to trade. That single fact changes the entire supply shock discussion. To put this into perspective, XRP's daily trading volume usually ranges between $1 and $3 billion. With 16 billion XRP available on exchanges, the market can absorb weeks of heavy buying without touching escrowed XRP or long-term cold wallets. That means even if demand spikes suddenly, there is still more than enough supply to meet it. A true supply shock only happens when buyers hit a wall and there is nothing left to sell. Right now, that wall does not exist. Many people ask an important question at this point. If XRP is so abundant, why does it sometimes feel scarce? The answer lies in selective data. Social media posts often highlight declining balances on Western exchanges like Coinbase or Binance US, while completely ignoring massive liquidity pools on Asian exchanges such as Upbit and BitHum. When XRP moves from one exchange to another, it can look like supply is disappearing, when in reality, it's just shifting locations. This creates a dangerous illusion. Retail trackers show outflows, influencers frame it as scarcity, and excitement builds. But when you aggregate global exchange data, the XRP was never gone. It simply moved east or into different exchange wallets. This is not a supply shock, it's a shell game. Another critical detail is what happens when price starts rising. As soon as XRP moves up, exchange inflows usually spike. Holders move XRP from private wallets back onto exchanges to sell into strength. This ghost supply appears exactly when buyers think scarcity has arrived. That is why XRP price rallies often stall unexpectedly. The uncomfortable truth is simple. You cannot have a supply shock while exchanges are overflowing. Right now, XRP is not a desert, it is a reservoir, deep, wide, and still very full. In the next part, we'll examine Ripple's escrow releases, token burns, and why deflation is often misunderstood in the XRP ecosystem. Now that we understand how much XRP is sitting on exchanges, it's time to address another pillar of the supply shock story, Ripple's escrow, and the idea that XRP is becoming deflationary. This is one of the most misunderstood topics in the XRP ecosystem, and it plays a huge role in why many investors believe scarcity is inevitable. Every month, Ripple unlocks 1 billion XRP from escrow. A few days later, headlines usually appear saying that Ripple has returned most of that XRP back into escrow. Supply shock supporters point to this and say, only 200 million XRP entered the market, the supply is shrinking. But this interpretation skips an important detail. The XRP that does not return to escrow is often sold to Ripple's on-demand liquidity partners or used to fund Ripple's operations. That means new XRP enters circulation every single month. Even if only 200 million XRP is added monthly, that equals 2.4 billion XRP per year. That is not scarcity. That is steady, predictable supply. Now compare this to XRP's burn mechanism. Every transaction on the XRP ledger destroys a tiny fraction of XRP. Since the network launched, only around 14 million XRP has been burned. In the time it takes the network to burn 1 million XRP, Ripple has already released hundreds of millions more into circulation. From a mathematical perspective, the burn rate is almost irrelevant. This leads us to a hard truth. XRP is not deflationary in any meaningful way right now. The escrow is not a countdown clock to zero supply. It is a release valve, and that valve is still open. With more than 35 billion XRP still remaining in escrow, scheduled releases will continue for many years. We are not running out of XRP anytime soon. There is another point that often gets overlooked. When Ripple returns XRP to escrow, it doesn't mean the market is starving for coins. In fact, it suggests the opposite. If demand were truly overwhelming, Ripple would sell the full 1 billion XRP every month. The fact that large portions are returned indicates there are not enough buyers at current prices to absorb the supply. This flips the supply shock narrative on its head. The escrow system was designed to provide stability and transparency, not engineered scarcity. It ensures predictable supply so institutions can operate without fear of sudden shortages. And that matters because XRP's long-term goal is utility, not rarity. If scarcity alone drove price, XRP would already be much higher. But markets don't reward hope, they reward usage. In the next part, we'll look at institutions, OTC desks, and why big players don't buy XRP the way retail investors expect them to. At this stage, many XRP holders place their final hope in institutions. The logic sounds reasonable. If banks, funds, and large asset managers enter the market, surely they will drain supply and force prices higher. But this belief is built on a misunderstanding of how institutions actually buy XRP. Large institutions do not rush onto retail exchanges like Coinbase or Binance and smash the buy button. Doing that would spike the price instantly and work against their interests. Instead, they use over-the-counter OTC desks. These are private deals made directly with Ripple or with large XRP holders. These transactions often never touch public order books, which means they create little to no visible price impact. So when you hear that institutions are accumulating XRP, it does not automatically mean exchange supply is shrinking. In many cases, the 16 billion XRP sitting on exchanges remains untouched, while institutional accumulation happens quietly in the background. This is why you can see positive headlines about adoption and still watch the chart move sideways. This misunderstanding leads us to the uncomfortable role of the retail investor. If there is no real supply shock, why is the narrative pushed so aggressively? The answer lies in liquidity. Large holders, often called whales, cannot exit positions without buyers. If a whale wants to sell tens or hundreds of millions of XRP, they need steady demand. The supply shock story creates exactly that. By convincing retail investors that XRP is about to run out, influencers encourage panic buying. Retail rushes in, order books fill with buy pressure, and whales are able to slowly sell into that demand without crashing the price. In this sense, the supply shock narrative becomes a tool, not a prediction. It creates exit liquidity. This cycle is not unique to crypto. It has existed in financial markets for over 100 years. Limited supply, last chance, and final opportunity are classic psychological triggers. They activate fear of missing out, not logic. And once price stalls again, the narrative quietly resets. This doesn't mean XRP has no future. It means price appreciation will not come from a magical shortage of coins. It will come from real-world demand, regulation clarity, and actual usage of the network. Until then, believing price is automatic can be dangerous. In the final part, we'll tie everything together and explain what actually needs to happen for XRP to move meaningfully, without relying on myths, shortcuts, or false scarcity. Now that we've stripped away the supply shock myth, we arrive at the most important question of all. If XRP's price won't rise because supply disappears, then what actually moves it? The answer is not scarcity, it is velocity and demand. XRP is not designed to be digital gold. Bitcoin thrives on scarcity. XRP was built for movement. It is meant to act like digital oil, powering global payments by flowing quickly and efficiently between institutions. For that system to work, liquidity must be deep, constant, and reliable. That is why the presence of roughly 16 billion XRP on exchanges is not a flaw, it is a requirement. Imagine a major bank needing to move hundreds of millions of dollars across borders in seconds. That transaction only works if there is enough XRP available at stable prices. A true supply shock would actually break the system. Thin order books would cause massive slippage, making XRP unusable for its core purpose. Institutions don't want rarity, they want efficiency. This leads us to a critical shift in mindset. XRP's price will not rise because coins vanish. It will rise when the same coins are used more often, faster, and at larger scale. Economists call this the velocity of money. High velocity means strong economic activity. Low velocity means stagnation. For years, XRP has been stuck in low velocity mode, holders waiting, not using. A real turning point comes when exchange balances begin to fall because XRP is being used, not hoarded. When banks, payment providers, and financial infrastructure require XRP daily, those 16 billion coins will start moving constantly. At that point, even a large supply can feel small. This is where many investors get trapped. The supply shock myth creates the illusion that price appreciation is automatic. It removes responsibility from the investor, but the ledger does not lie. Validators do not lie, and right now the data tells us the market is liquid, efficient, and patient. That doesn't make XRP a bad investment. It makes it a long-term utility investment, not a lottery ticket. The real catalyst will be regulatory clarity, real transaction volume, and global financial adoption, not a countdown to zero supply. Before we close, it's important to be clear. I am not a financial advisor. This content is for education and entertainment only. Cryptocurrency markets are highly volatile and you can lose some or all of your investment. Always do your own research and consider speaking with a qualified financial professional before making any financial decisions. Your money, your responsibility. The supply shock might be a myth, but the opportunity in XRP is real. It's just not simple, fast, or guaranteed. The real edge comes from understanding the data, not chasing the dream. If you're ready to stop following myths and start following facts, you're exactly where you need to be. Welcome to the real Gainverse.